society progresses when old men plant trees under the shade of which they will never sit.
Really, you've brought in a very different side of what a chief digital officer needs to do or needs to build. Pretty unconventional in the thought process.
I get paid to be unconventional, so it's good, right?
The building blocks of human intelligence is at the core. And then there is the layer of tech that you choose and decide what needs to be dealt with.
If you apply amazing technology onto something that is already an inefficiency, then in effect you're making your inefficiency more efficient. So Gen Z, for example, I believe they have a very different relationship with money that our generation has and our parents' generation has.
Yeah. If you go and ask someone that hey, this is what I'm trying to understand, they'll give you the typical answer, but they'll not tell you something which is between the lines. And that's the reading that we as leaders need to sort of do. Lovely to have you, Shayan, with us. You've been on People Matters platforms earlier, but good to have you as part of a podcast setting.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Super. So let's get going on your interesting journey. And you've been someone who's done sales, business, international business, market developments, and then picking up the hat of the chief digital officer.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to. It's been an absolute privilege to work for an organization that can afford you 7 to 8 different opportunities in a decade. I've been there obviously more closer to 2 decades.
Okay.
But I think my first part of my journey was quite traditional. So in the sales and business development side, facing off to clients, running business development teams across our commercial banking business, across our transaction banking business. But then I started getting an itch. And the itch was, one, to travel extensively. Across the world, go and see new places to explore, new cultures, new work cultures. And then the other aspect was this revolution that we were seeing happening around e-commerce back in the late 2009, 2010. And then I was like, okay, well, there's something interesting changing. I want to explore this a little bit more. I'm just genuinely a curious person.
Yeah.
And so I started my learning journey as well simultaneously, which I think has been, like going down a rabbit hole. So it's like, it's similar to doom scrolling. I always say that you're you start off looking at a YouTube video about astrology and you end up looking at food videos, an hour and a half later, and you don't know how you got from one point to the other. And I think it's similar for my learning journey. It's been, just picking up things that are interesting to me and then kind of delving further into those areas that are piquing more interest. So it's been a curiosity journey, as I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But what was that point when you said, I want to really pick up digital was there a moment, was there a inflection point somewhere where you took that call?
Yeah, so I think the first point was I was quite interested in creativity. And there was this book by a gentleman by the name of Judkins, who's a professor at the, I think in UCL in the UK. He's an art professor. And he's got this book called The Art of Creative Thinking.
Okay.
And it just was one of those randoms before a flight, you pick it up and you start reading it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put it down. It's short stories about some of the greatest minds in the world and how their creative process operates. I think that was a pretty big inflection point for me because I was so captured by the nature of people like Salvador Dali or Picasso or even Steve Jobs and how their creative process operated, that it just piqued my interest. And I just wrote to Rod. I found his email address because he's a professor.
Yeah.
And I sent him a note saying, I'm completely fascinated by this. And he's like, well, I'm having this class. And this allows for public to join if they're interested. So why don't you come down to London and spend a bit of time? And I said, amazing. So I went and spent time with him. And then he piqued my interest on other things around the area of play.
Okay.
And how play plays such a huge part in the creative process. And that's like you could pick up some clay and kind of make something new out of it, or you could make 100 versions of the same magazine cover and he'll give you an assignment. And it just started piquing my interest about, the world was just headed toward the internet revolution. We were starting seeing business models emerge like Amazon and, I think the early stages of streaming and downloading music officially through iTunes and all of this stuff. And I was like, there's something different happening. And I kind of put my creative hat on with my interest in technology hat on. And I said, let's start delving deeper.
Yeah.
And I never got a chance to go to an exceptional university. So a lot of my friends were hugely intelligent, and they went to Ivy League schools and all of that. And I was like, well, I have a little bit of money saved up. I'm going to invest in myself. And then I started kind of delving into looking at courses at Cambridge and London Business School and INSEAD. And I said, I want to be around people who are much smarter than me. And I want to kind of absorb from their experiences. I want to absorb from these great professors. And so it just became a habit. Okay. So every year I take out time. Some of that initially was funded by myself. Later on, when the organization, I think HSBC was recognizing that there's value in sending this guy to different places, then they started supporting.
He comes back with great ideas.
He comes back with ideas. And so it's really amazing and it's so humbling to be able to merge my interests with my job. And so if you talk about just specifically that inflection point, I think it was just some words in a book or that just started piquing my interest in the process, and it kind of led me down a rabbit hole to digital.
Wow, look at what could happen picking up a random book and what it could do to someone's career.
Absolutely. It's been, like I said, I'm very, very privileged.
Yeah.
So,
Shayan, what I like is you're talking about all the tech interest, but a deep sense on the whole creativity aspect of things and trying to marry both.
Both, yeah.
What in my experience, and I have had the privilege of talking to many folks in the tech and digital space. And a lot of them are driven by the latest technology, what's new, what's in.
Yeah.
And what I like about this conversation is the whole creativity aspect of things and how you've been able to use that towards building a new set of career in your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was intentional.
Okay.
And I think that's what I just love about this journey. And again, you have to find the right organization that allows you the space to do that. So important. And then within the organization, you need sponsors.
Yes.
Sponsors who believe in what you're doing, believe in investing in people longer term. And HSBC itself, and then specifically even my current boss who I've known for about over a decade, Kiju Wong, who's the CEO of Singapore. They're the kind of people that believe that investing in people longer term is going to be beneficial for all parties concerned. So again, like I said, I could have been in an organization that had a different type of culture. I could have had the different kind of sponsors, but it's just the universe kind of came together and allowed that to happen. So
wow. I love what you talked about on taking a long-term view on someone, and I feel many organizations and leaders who've been very successful have had that knack of investing into talent with a view that it's not a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year game, but you're really looking at decade-long view. Yeah. It's very difficult to get that kind of a view.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of folks in the newer generations entering the workforce who are like, oh, 3 years is such a long time. Yeah, you're having that kind of thought process as well. What does it take to identify? In your case, of course, you've been in HSBC, and I think that was a great
culture match, values match. Yeah.
What would your message be to some of this new generation of workforce coming into play? How do they look at a decade-long planning? Let's not get into 2 decades, but at least let's say a decade-long planning or looking at a single career.
I mean, wow. I mean, the new generation's quite different from you and I suppose.
Yeah.
They're coming. They're fully digitally native.
Yes.
I was born in the early 80s. So for me, we're considered Zennial. We're kind of in between millennials and Gen X's. And so we've seen the world without the internet, and we've seen the world with the internet. And so we manage. We're survivors. And so we're not opposed to technology because we've seen the value that it brings, but at the same time, we can have very strong interpersonal relationships. This generation, however, like looking at the millennials, looking at the Gen Zs, they're very, very different. Even millennials, if you think about it, they came into the world with all of these, e-commerce and Ubers and Netflixes and everything instant and everything immediate. But influencing wasn't a big part of their life. Influencing came in with the Gen Z generation, right? Now with they're learning through TikToks and short videos. They're learning through podcasts. They're picking up, like information from finfluencers talking about new investments that they can be making. So their formatting is very, very different. And as a result of that, I think what's waned over the years is patience. So my father's generation would work in the same organization for 40 years, and that was norm. And I think it would be the same for you, right? In our cultures, in South Asian cultures. But then that timeline has been decreasing over the years, and now it's coming into why do you even want us to come to office?
Yeah.
And those debates are raging in the media as we speak, with various people thinking differently about it. But I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to talk about leadership first.
Okay.
And I'll say this, that it was a quote I'd read again in one of my doom scrolling forays, which said, and I hope I get this right, but it said, society progresses when old men plant trees under the shade of which they will never sit.
That's deep.
And I think it's so important to consider that we have a responsibility as a generation to clear the path for others that are coming behind us. Rather than forcing them to be the way we are, we have to change a bit of ourselves. And the only two constants in life is death and change. The only certainties in life are death and change. Somebody asked me the other day in a similar conversation, that like, what's the worst advice you've ever gotten? And I said, the worst advice I ever got was somebody said, don't change. Because it's such an important part of how you react to things and how you are able to flex and adapt. That's one of the most important parts of building relationships. Being able to hear different perspectives, see different points of view, learn from them, grow with them, provide your perspective as well, and then take educated decisions. And I think we're living in a world of immense change and immense opinions and immense perspectives. So from my side, I think it's incumbent on leaders to allow people that freedom to share, freedom to have their opinions, freedom to provide them platforms where they can exchange ideas. Because the diversity of ideas creates the best opportunity for innovation. And so I think, like, from my perspective, the new generation, yes, they're coming in. I think they can be a little bit more patient, but I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to create platforms that allow for their uniqueness to shine. Right? And leaders must make people believe in themselves. Your job is, like, our job is not to just teach them stuff. Our job is to make them believe in themselves. So whatever we need to do to make that happen, that's our responsibility.
And a lot of reverse mentoring as well these days. Of course. Because that, I feel, holds a huge key towards what we could potentially unlock.
But not everybody takes that lightly, right? Like, I think that's where change will happen in this industry, is that we've got to recalibrate the design of the experiences that we are putting people through. And I think, I'm not saying that innovation needs to be breakthrough all the time. But we need the organizations to be in a mindset where they're constantly looking to improve things. So there's this lady, Dr. Linda Hill, who is based at Harvard Business School, and I was very lucky to go and spend some time doing a course with her. And she's written a book called Collective Genius.
Okay.
And it's really about not taking your smartest and brightest and most creative people and stuffing them in a room and putting Innovation Lab on the door and then forgetting them there. Because change has to happen as a collaboration across the organization. So how do you drive meaningful change which doesn't require you to put people into boxes? And the way she's been able to explain it is that innovation should be anything new and useful. The most simplistic definition, so it's inclusive rather than exclusive. And I think that is so important. So I'll give you another example. You use life insurance products.
Yeah.
If you look at the terminology of when you're signing on a life or a critical illness document, you feel like you need a lawyer to explain it to you.
Yeah. One never reads it.
Either one never reads it, or once you're in that position, you might realize that what you thought was the coverage might not be the coverage.
Yeah.
And I think that this the way in which products are designed and terminology is very intrinsic. It's very bank-centric. But the end user is a consumer. So unless there's empathy and compassion for the people you're building something for, you will continue to use that kind of terminology rather than looking at terminology that is going to be easier and simpler for you to understand. My wife, for example, I mean, she has more money saved up than I do. And she just recently said, like, I'm sick of term deposits. I want to try new products.
Okay.
She doesn't trust me, obviously, to do that for her. But anyway, so she said, I want to meet an investment professional. And she sat there, and by the way, she's also much more academically, she's a professional and she's academically more inclined than I am. And she couldn't understand what the gentleman was saying. Because the terminology that was being thrown at her, she's not a finance professional, she's not done this before. And she was just like, this is so complicated. And why would I want to invest in something I don't understand?
Wow.
And you see like Gen Z now, which are, and this is factual, Gen Z at the age of 21 is investing more than any other previous generation of 21-year-olds in history. And the reason is because they have access to crypto, they have access to NFTs, they have access to meme coins, and they all see an opportunity. And those products and services on Telegram and Discords, they're getting all the information they need. They don't have to go to a bank to understand it.
Yeah.
So that generation is not going to sit there and come to you and then start speaking to relationship managers.
Yeah.
They want something different, and they will be your clients very, very soon.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I am trying to evangelize in the industry is you cannot keep banging your head against the wall and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
And every time you lose a product manager in a job, you can't go across the street from another bank and hire the same product manager and bring them back here because you won't find change.
Yeah.
So on a Pareto principle, I believe 20% of your resource, investment, time should be looking at breakthrough and disruption. And then 80% you can start building a culture of trying new things, creating new ideas and so on and so forth. But you must invest in change. So that's kind of where I'm at about that. And I think that's the expectation Gen Z has of their workplaces.
What I'm liking about this, Shayan, is this whole aspect of, challenge the fundamentals. And, and that happens through deep listening. Or sometimes listening beyond what our users are telling us, what our people are telling us, right? If you go and ask someone that, hey, this is what I'm trying to understand, they'll give you the typical answer, but they'll not tell you something which is between the lines. And that's the reading that we as leaders need to sort of do.
Oh, yeah, I think that's so accurate. So it's the Henry Ford problem of faster horses. So Henry, it's exactly that. Like you'd always say that if I asked people what they wanted in terms of transport, they would say faster horses.
Yes.
But I think hearing, like if you look at Uber or Netflix or Spotify or any of these these changes that happened, even moving from CDs and laser discs to downloading music. You might remember this company called Napster.
Yeah, of course.
And Napster used to be the place where every kid in university got their music.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this massive case, Metallica versus Napster, that actually collapsed Napster.
Yeah.
But what was fundamental was the change in consumer behavior and consumer expectation. And the only people who realized that there was an opportunity there it wasn't Sony, it wasn't Universal, it was Apple.
Yeah.
And that's when iTunes started picking up. It was 99 cents per song or something like that back in the day, pre-streaming. But that's what I think it is. Like a lot of time consumers and people don't know what they want, but they know when they see it. So it's really about understanding their motivations. So Gen Z, for example, I believe they have a very different relationship with money that our generation has and our parents' generation has.
Yeah.
For example, they don't want to own homes. Half of the reason is homes become so expensive that it's impossible to own a home. They don't want to own cars. They don't want to have assets, material assets in that way. But we believe that there might be a way in which you can give them recognition, give them an opportunity to share their thoughts, help them be part of a design process to create something new. They want to influence.
Yeah.
That's how their kind of determination of value is. And so I think like you're not going to ask them, hey, what product do you want? You have to design the products behind these motivations.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of a design thinking process. And I think that's not happening enough in at least in my industry.
Sometimes I feel it's about making bold moves when the path is very clear. Because you take bold moves when the path is unclear or treacherous. But if you are zooming on a highway, can you see the inevitable and take that? In People Matters journey, at the peak of when we had the print, we used to have physical print copy of the magazine.
Okay.
And that was the most read medium. At the peak, this is 2014, at a peak of our magazine subscriptions, we were bold enough in our offsites to say that tomorrow, if we don't have our community members reading the magazine, we'll close down the magazine.
Wow.
And fast forward to today and COVID and what it has done on the entire digital side of consumption of content, we just evolved on channels. Had we been on the thought process that no, we are a magazine, we're not a magazine. We are in the process of helping talent leaders take better talent decisions.
Yeah.
We are in the business of knowledge. We are in the business of getting community together to solve for things. I think till the time that is clear and that is the North Star, then I think channels will keep on evolving.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
I think similar is the case with other industries as well, and in the banking space as well, where the users or the people who are consuming our products are having fundamental block level thinking change, saying that, do I need this? The example that you gave about the credit card, why does it need to be credit or a card? Both words are irrelevant.
I mean, obviously the core of the industry doesn't like hearing that.
Yeah.
But somebody has to say it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what the uniqueness of somebody that has a role like mine is I can't say it. It's sometimes it's well received and sometimes it's not well received. But the idea of this is that you have to spark some curiosity.
Yeah.
You have to spark a what if, or maybe there is another way. And I think that's so important in any kind of change that is taking place. I mean, you gave the example of other industries, like financial services is connected to all industries. So if there's something changing in healthcare, so for example, with the mRNA vaccines that were created in time of COVID, pretty soon there might be vaccines that are unique to you and specifically designed to your genetic code or my genetic code. In that case, insurance will have to change.
Yes.
And so if you think about, even though that there's a change in healthcare, I have to keep track of that so that I have to change my financial services products accordingly.
Yeah.
And the same goes for real estate tomorrow. The way ownership is changing. Rent to own is a concept that's coming through in the United States now, where you can have the option of paying rent for 2 years, and then have the option of buying the property and using the 2 years as a down payment.
Yeah.
So you can actually own a property much earlier in life than waiting to build up a cachet of a down payment over 10 years, And again, the way in which we mortgage that property then is different from what it would be traditionally.
Yeah.
So I think financial services is connected to all industries.
Yeah.
So my interest and my excitement is going and looking at how other industries are changing so that we can then capture the downstream opportunity there to start leveraging on technology. And that's why I think it's wrong to go and start talking about technology, because technology to me is Lego blocks.
Yeah.
But the actual end model of it is application. I mean, it's that fundamental. People like Jeff Bezos, etc., compare it to electricity.
Yeah.
It's that fundamental. So do you have somebody in your organization looking after electricity, or are they making nice ways to connect, like beautiful lamps and lighting in a room and so on and so forth? So it's always the application. So my question is always, and just talking about artificial intelligence, is what's the application?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the deep and meaningful application of artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence that is really going to create fundamental shifts? And I think we're not even scratching the surface right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not even scratching the surface. So people who are just like, yeah, we've applied it. I'm like, well, you've applied it in the way the internet was applied when HTML was used as a single window web-based search, and you had, Alta Vista and Netscape and all these other Netscape Navigator. I said, that's where you are right now, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got to think of how this application is going to change. And one of the models that I believe is going to be hugely important is something I call generative personalization. Generative personalization is different from hyper-personalization. Hyper-personalization is that you specifically have a profile, a behavior, savings goals, an opportunity, and I will recommend certain products to you as best as I possibly can. Generative personalization is I will generate products for you.
Wow.
Now that's the shift. Now somebody has to be visionary about this and start trying to move people towards that direction. Because if we keep applying amazing technology on traditional, for example, somebody would say like, okay, I'm going to apply artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence on a call center. My question would be, why do you still have a call center? Because a call center is a flaw in the way in which your product is designed. That's why people are having to call it.
Yeah.
Right? So Netflix and Amazon and all these guys don't have call centers per se, unless it's a last resort.
Yeah.
But it's not true for every industry.
Yeah.
So if you apply amazing technology onto something that is already an inefficiency, then in effect, you're making your inefficiency more efficient.
I like the way the thought process is. And I think something similar Elon Musk had actually said.
Yes.
That,
he does say this a lot.
You don't try investing time into solving for something which shouldn't have been there in the first place.
You don't optimize something that shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's true, right? The rocket, SpaceX rockets and the Amazon rocket that just took off a few days ago are all designed on new constituent technology. It's not technology that was from NASA in 1969 when they went to the moon.
Yeah.
That's what all rockets were like. And then they said, hang on, we'll redesign it with today's world, today's applications. And I think that's extremely, extremely important.
So the fundamental block was questioned, right? Like coming back to this whole thought process that we started.
It's called first principles
thinking. Absolutely. On the AI part of things, I think, and I heard this somewhere, that it's almost like the refrigeration technology when it came in. More money was made by products that were invented that needed refrigeration. So Coke made far more
There you
money.
go. Yeah,
or
exactly
some of the
right.
other products in, let's say, the ice cream space or some of the other
Yes,
space,
yes.
they made far more money.
That's
It's not necessarily
absolutely
the
correct.
refrigeration companies.
Absolutely correct.
Similar, I think we are in a similar situation with AI, where look at it as refrigeration technology. Now, what do you do with it from the application part
Exactly.
is where the essence might lie.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I mean, it's such a great example that you've given. And I think that's why the extrapolation of the ideation is so important.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that what you're going to do, what you can end up doing is democratizing personalization, which is a oxymoron if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like today, it costs a lot of money to create a unique banking experience for you,
Yeah.
for example. But if you have an engine that's doing that seamlessly and efficiently and on an ongoing basis, morphing and changing and creating solutions for you specifically on an extended period of time, the only thing requiring that it's got we've got massive computation power and data feeds are feeding into it in an efficient way, then you'll feel like it's actually your Spotify. The way we look at Spotify and Netflix is like, it's the same platform that I have and the same platform my wife has and the same platform my friends have, but none of our platforms look the same because the algorithm is so strong in creating a unique experience for me versus my friends and family that I feel like it's my Spotify. I think that's how the world will eventually end up. The only difference is, and I heard this on good authority, that very soon you're going to have a Spotify playlist on your, and I don't want to use Spotify, let's say any streaming service that is unique only to you.
Yeah. We already have, by the way.
Yeah. So there you go. Right?
Multiple of them.
But the music is also unique to you.
Oh, wow.
I'm saying that the music is being generated
only for you.
Only for you.
Wow.
And I think that's also another big concept about where media is going to head.
Yeah.
Shows designed uniquely for you.
Absolutely.
Music designed uniquely for you. So why not products designed uniquely for you?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's, I think, you have to push the boundaries of things. It's not really only about I can do my reports more easily or I can prepare for this interview faster on ChatGPT. I can, but let's push the boundary now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now we've talked a lot on the consumer side of things.
Sure.
Let's now try to come towards the inside the organization on the employee side of things.
Sure.
Now, to make all of this happen, you need very different talent. You need talent that is nurtured. You need talent that is given freedom. How do you think we are doing on that side of the equation?
Yeah. So, I mean, we touched on a bit of it, right? So we said that today, an easy path is if you lose a specific kind of individual with a certain skill set, you're going to go across the street to the competing bank or to a similar industry, and you're going to pick up somebody who's been doing a similar job.
Yeah.
And that's a very easy way to plug a gap. What that won't do is fundamentally shift things.
Yeah.
That will keep the lights on, maybe make them brighter, maybe move things a little bit incrementally, but it's not going to fundamentally change things. So what I think is happening is, and particularly now with Gen Zs entering the workforce, is that we need to provide platforms that allow people to really explore and experiment and exchange ideas. So there's this thing I call the 4 Cs, which are extremely important for organizations internally to, really create the space for people to innovate. So the first one is compassion. Okay, and a lot of time people ask me, why do you start with that? I said, because if you don't have empathy and you don't have an understanding of how things, how you're impacting another human being, being self-aware, being authentic, you're not going to be able to build relationships. And that's so important to be able to have the self-awareness, to have the authenticity, to build strong and meaningful relationships, and even in designing products and services. So compassion.
Okay.
Collaboration, meaning, like going back to one of the points I made earlier, coming together around a problem, coming together around an opportunity. Not that this is that department's problem or that department's problem or that person's problem, but really getting together people who have a stake in and an interest in that specific type of problem or that specific type of opportunity, and getting them to co-create together. That kind of collaboration. So in the bank, for example, we have so many different kinds of products and services and businesses, retail banking, corporate banking, investment banking, so on and so forth. But at the end, if you look at, I'll give you a healthcare example. If you care about the patient, you can bank the hospital better. If you can bank the hospital better, you can design a better insurance product. If you can get a better insurance product, you can get better support from the government in terms of the Ministry of Health. So everything is connected if you have to build it around what problem you're solving. So collaboration.
Yeah.
The third one is consistency, because I think that you need to be okay with failure. And that's a message that a lot of companies don't give to people a lot of times. So that need to take risks and to try new things is a little bit muted. So giving people the belief that it'll be okay if you try and fail. That's a very tough message, because not everybody can be successful at delivering that. And the second thing is that there must be a process to your madness. There must be a method to the chaos.
Yeah.
Whether that's a design thinking process or whether that's making sure people get the time, 20% of their time. Google used to do this at some time, that you can work on your own project, et cetera, et cetera. Really building the boundaries of these things is so important. That allowing people to have the space, but also having the process in place and supporting them when they fail. I think that becomes really, really important. So I've done compassion, collaboration, consistency. Am I forgetting the fourth one? Creativity. And that, to me, I think I've spoken a lot about. But I think creativity is a fundamental human skill. It's a fundamental human trait. We're curious just as being human beings. And I think really diving into that, allowing people to be, building on their creativity is only going to support organizations. And I think these, when you look at, people are usually all like, why didn't you talk about like AI? Like you want an AI engineer, you want this and you want that. I said, if you don't have these four things, how effective can you be as an AI engineer? How effective can you be as a blockchain specialist? Like you need to build these kind of skill sets as the base culture that you have, and then you can bring in tremendously talented people that can thrive on this basis.
What you're essentially saying, Shayan, is the building blocks of human intelligence is at the core. And then there is the layer of tech that you choose and decide what needs to be done.
Correct.
When.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I said human first always. So when somebody says, so what's your digital strategy?
Yeah.
I always say, we have to first determine what your human strategy is.
Beautiful.
Because digital is just enablement.
Yeah.
It's really about supporting humans to reach their full potential, to give them the courage, give them the backing, giving them the support, and the tech will come. The tech will keep changing.
Yeah.
But if you have a culture that can capture that, you're gonna be ahead of the game.
So building on from the aspect you talked about culture. So what kind of cultures do you feel organizations need to then build or work towards to drive that kind of innovation, to give support to the talent inside, to sort of thrive on that? And is there a role of tech over there as well that enables that?
I think people are very sensitive to leadership just towing a party line. I think, intuitively, when you sit at a table and then you have a senior leader across the table and they're like, okay, so what projects are you working on? And you get excited about innovative products. And they're like, well, this is going to generate income in 5 years' time, not now. Tell me about something you're doing right now. I think that kills people's spirit.
Yeah.
And so the leadership's ownership is one of the most fundamental the measurement of success of an innovation culture, more than literally, I would think, anything else. Because you can get all the funding and you can
Yeah.
get the resources, and they're like, yeah, it's someone else's problem. Let them execute. But their interest and their drive or their commitment, which again, like I would say, I was so lucky to have
Yeah.
as part of the organization that I'm in, that the support from all facets of the organization is available to you, even accessing clients to be part of that process with you. It then just becomes a norm. It's the way you operate. But I think one of the most fundamental things is how serious is your executive committee, how serious is your board, and what are they willing to put onto the table? How are they willing to participate in the process to actually change the culture? Because culture won't change if like 5 people are considered innovative.
Yeah.
You need to start driving it from that, and that's really where the rest of the organization galvanizes behind it. So I think, I say this again, like many times in these kind of conversations. I always say, like, how serious are they? And I think a lot of people have very different answers to this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody's bought in.
Correct. I've had lovely time having this conversation with you, Shayan. I know paucity of time, but loved your energy, loved the thought process, and
Thank you
how
very
you
much.
get into the fundamentals. And really, you've brought in a very different side of what a chief digital officer needs to do or needs to build. Pretty unconventional in the thought process.
I get paid to be unconventional. So it's good, right? In fact, one of the articles in the Straits Times, when I had just taken on the role, said the chief digital officer also has to be the chief collaboration officer. And so it doesn't work till we set those spaces down. And now I'm so thankful that we've got the whole organization running behind this now.
Super.
And it's starting to make its way into the grassroots. So there's still a long journey. And there's still an immense amount of things for me to learn. But I think we're well on our way. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here. I don't know if we've covered everything that you wanted, but hopefully it's enough for other people to pique some interest and questions.
Absolutely, it was. Thank you so much, Shayan.